Welcome everyone to lesson 3 in our self-reflection series. We have 2 more to go after this. And while there's a lot more we can dive into in self-reflection, I've narrowed it down not to continue on the same topic and belabor the point. I just want to challenge us to do the hard work of self-reflecting on several areas in our lives. And then from there, you can choose areas that you might notice, and you can self-reflect on those, and you can grow in your own time, and hopefully this will just be the beginning and a catalyst towards that. In this lesson, we'll look at relationships. Part of healthy self-reflection is taking a look at the relationships in our lives. Relationships can be with our friends, social media connections, business partners, and more intimate like husband and wife. When we take a look at the relationships that we are in, we have to determine if they're good or if they're bad for us. Is there an equal give and take, meaning that you give, they take, and vice versa? If one side is always giving, but never being poured into, then you might want to reconsider this relationship. If a relationship is bad or toxic, leaving it is not necessarily the immediate answer. Sometimes we have to work through difficulties and differences. That's the mark of maturity, and do the hard work of healing relationships. But at least by looking at them, we can say, okay, I need to fix this. I can see this area that kind of irritates me. So let me sit down with them and have a conversation, and let's work on making our relationship better. And this can all be done when we do the hard work of reflecting on our relationships, both of ourselves and seeing what others are bringing to the table. Let me also say that I am not a counselor or an expert. I don't claim to know it all. I merely am speaking from experience and from the knowledge that I have. I have had healthy relationships. I've been a part of toxic relationships. I have dealt with individuals who just wanted something from me, but they never wanted to give anything back. I've dealt with narcissistic people. And I've dealt with some of the kindest and most compassionate individuals you will ever find. I've had relationships where individuals invested and still continue to invest in me. I'm covering the subject because it's important to have healthy relationships. The damage that unhealthy relationships can cause include, but not limited to, added stress, unhealthy habits, long-term emotional and mental damage, amongst many other things. We have to do the hard work of examining ourselves, and we have to do the hard work of looking at our relationships. As with anything, you start with yourself. Even if you believe that you have no part or no wrong in it, you start with yourself. Examine yourself. Are you the problem? Is there something that you could do different? Get an outsider's perspective, someone that you trust as well, and have them help you. Once you fully examined yourself, then you can look at the relationships that you have. What would you like for that other person in your relationship to improve on? What are they doing that irritates you? Are there patterns or just single incidents of unhealthy behavior? Patterns are concerning. Single incidents, everyone makes mistakes, everyone messes up. No relationship is perfect. These and other questions are good to ask. As I said, you can seek advice from friends, from your pastor, etc., to gain more on relationships. And always take the advice with a grain of salt. We all can be limited in our perspectives and short-sighted and make wrong judgments. So be careful. There's also loads of books and online articles that cover relationships. There's a lot that can help you out. I'm doing my best to keep this short. Most of my videos go about 35 to 45 minutes. We're going to look at healthy biblical relationships and a couple relationships and partnerships in history that have led to great success. And then we'll bring this all to a summary. But let's begin with the definition, and we'll go from there. What is a relationship? It is the way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, or the state of being connected. There is a connectedness. You connect on something. You may not connect on everything, but you connect on something, and you form a relationship, a friendship, a partnership, something. Another way to define it is the way in which two or more people or groups regard and behave toward each other. So how you behave with each other. A relationship should be built on trust, support, mutual respect, and love. You need to be able to trust one another. You need to be there for each other, and someone might be, maybe a friend is going through a loss, and you comfort them, and then years down the road, you go through one and they return it. The give and take doesn't always happen at the same time. It can be at different times, but it's that you're always there for each other. Another thing about great relationships, you don't always have to talk every day. You can go days without talking, but still remain in a great relationship with a friend simply because of the respect that you have for each other, and the love that you have for each other. Some examples of relationships are David and Jonathan in the Bible, Barnabas and Saul, or who would later become Paul, and then Jesus and the 12 disciples. In history, we have the Wright brothers, and we have Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, who are the founders of Apple. We'll look at these, and then we'll look at some verses in the Bible that talk about the importance of relationship. We turn to 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 1 through 4. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Souls were knitted, meaning they had a deep friendship that had formed. And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. And Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him, and gave it to David and his garments, even to his sword, to his bow, and to his girdle. So we find that they had this deep relationship. Jonathan was King Saul's son, and Saul was seeking to kill David, Despite this, Jonathan stayed true to his friendship, to his relationship with David. In 1 Samuel 20, we find the story of David and Jonathan and how Jonathan warns David. David fled from Naioth and Ramah, verse 1, and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What's my iniquity, and what is my sin before thy father that he seeketh my life?" David's talking to Jonathan, "What did I do? He wants to kill me." And he said unto him, "God forbid, thou shalt not die. Behold, my father will do nothing, either great or small, that he will show it me. Why should my father hide this thing from me? It is not so." David sware moreover and said, "Thy father certainly knoweth that I have found grace in thine eyes. And he saith, Let not Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, there is but a step between me and death." And said Jonathan unto David, "Whatsoever thy soul desireth, I will even do it for thee." And then the story goes that the new moon, "Behold, tomorrow is a new moon. I should not fail to sit with the king at meat. Let me go, that I may hide myself in the field unto the third day at even. If thy father at all miss me, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me, that he might run to Bethlehem, the city. There is a yearly sacrifice there for all the family." David's supposed to be at this banquet with Saul. Instead, he's not going to show up. When he doesn't show up, Saul gets upset. We jump down to verse 16. "So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, that the Lord even required it to hand to David's enemies. And Jonathan caused David to swear again, because he loved him, for he loved him as he loved his own soul. And Jonathan said to David, Tomorrow is the new moon, and thou shalt be missed, because thy seat will be empty. When thou hast stayed 3 days, then thou shalt go down quickly, and come to the place where thou didst hide thyself, when the business was in hand, and shalt remain by the stone Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows on the side thereof, as though I shot at a mark. Behold, I'll send a lad, saying, Go, find out the arrows. If I expressly say unto the lad, Behold, the arrows are on this side of thee, take them. Then come thou, for there is peace to thee and no hurt, as the Lord liveth. But if I say thus unto the young man, Behold, the arrows are beyond thee, go thy way, for the Lord has sent thee away. And as touching the matter which thou and I have spoken of, behold, the Lord be between thee and me forever." So they just devised this plan that Jonathan is going to shoot some arrows, and depending on where they're at, it'll determine if David is to flee or to stay. And in this way, Jonathan can protect David. Even though Jonathan was Saul's son, Jonathan's loyalty was to what was right and to his friend David. Saul was seeking the life of David, which was wrong, and Jonathan knew this. And Jonathan couldn't stand by this. And so he sought to help David. So they devised a plan, and ended up the arrows landed beyond, and David fled and hid. There are some times that we must choose friends over family. And it's difficult because family is blood. At the same time, if an individual is wrong in their dealings or in the way that they're treating another individual, then it's important for us to take the right actions. Now, this doesn't mean that you cut someone off completely, necessarily. It doesn't mean that you're harsh or mean-spirited towards them. The point of a healthy relationship is that while they may not always understand your plans or your dreams, or they may not understand you, they respect you and have enough confidence and trust that you're making the right decision. Now, they might express their opinion, but they'll let you take a step and take a chance on what you believe is right. Family sometimes can let us down, and sometimes family isn't the best. And while circumstances aren't always the case, like this with David, where Saul was trying to seek his life, sometimes our friends and their advice is better than our families. And we have to be discerning enough. We have to be able to look at these relationships and make the decision, okay, most of all, take it to God. Okay, God, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. God, help me to know which is the path that I should take. So in our relationship, sometimes we find we have to make hard decisions. And we have to side with, though I don't really want to use that word, but we need to go with what decision is correct, what would be beneficial to us. Another relationship that we find is Barnabas and Saul, who later become Paul. Now, Saul was a persecutor of the Christians, and he was not well received when Barnabas, when he came to become a disciple. Find in Acts chapter 9, verse 26, and when Saul was come to Jerusalem, he essayed to join himself to the disciples. So Saul wants to join up, but they're all afraid of him. They believe not that he's a disciple. They thought he was trying to get into the inner circle and then wreak havoc. But Barnabas took him, brought him to the apostles, declared unto them how he had seen the Lord in the way, and that he had spoken to him, and how he had preached boldly at Damascus in the name of Jesus, and he was with them coming in and going out at Jerusalem. We all need a Barnabas in our lives. This is an important relationship. When no one else believes in you, when everybody else gives up on you, when no one will take a chance, Barnabas comes along. And Barnabas encourages you and vouches for you. Because of Barnabas vouching for Saul, he became one of the greatest missionaries, probably the greatest missionary, probably the most well-known character in the Bible next to Jesus. All because someone believed in him. We see the same kind of thing later on in history when Abraham Lincoln vouched for Ulysses S. Grant. Sometimes we need to be that person in a relationship to speak up for someone. And be bold enough to say, hey, I vouch for that person. If everybody gives you funny stares and thinks you're falling off a log, be the one to encourage, be the one to vouch for someone, that they might have a chance at their dreams, or they might have a chance to do what God wants them to do. Be a Barnabas. Acts 13, Barnabas and Saul would take a first missionary journey. Eventually, they would have a little bit of a dispute. Barnabas would go his way, and Paul would go his way. But the point is Paul got a start because of a Barnabas. So in relationships, look for Barnabases or be one yourself. Jesus and the 12 disciples. There's so much about the 12 disciples. throughout all the Gospels. Jesus gathered 12 unlikely individuals. Matthew was a tax collector. Tax collectors were the lowest of the low in that society. We have Peter and others who were fishermen. Judas, who was a treasurer. We have other occupations. Jesus pulled together this unlikely bunch. Of the 12, 3 were given access to to additional responsibilities. This was just based on trust. This was not favoritism. Jesus entrusted these 3, Peter, John, and James, and they would be taken up to the Mount of Transfiguration. They were sort of the inner circle, if you will. Jesus challenged the 12 disciples, and he prepared them for the tasks ahead of him. He asked difficult questions at times. Peter was more the vocal one. He was the mouthpiece. John was kind of the beloved. We see him leaning on Jesus at the Last Supper. Judas was a thief and stole from the treasury. Peter would deny Jesus. Thomas would doubt. And Jesus made an exception and said, "Here, feel my side, feel my hands." James and John wanted to sit on the right and the left hand in heaven. There were all these difficulties. Peter walked on water, but then sank because of the wind, and he got chided for his lack of faith. They were on a boat in the storm. Jesus was asleep at the bottom, in the bottom of the ship. They thought they were going to perish. And again, Jesus chided the disciples for their lack of faith in that situation. And on the situation goes, and the stories go of the 12 disciples. What we learn from this is that relationships are not perfect. But you learn to work with people's mistakes, and you learn to have compassion and love toward them. You have to know when enough's enough and let go of someone. When someone is just through growing pains of the relationship, maybe they're bringing their own past or their own difficulties and the way they were raised into the relationship. And you might be the one that it helps them to correct those things and makes them into who they need to be. We have to be patient and long-suffering with others. This can be the difficulty of relationships, because where is that line? And only you really know the answer to that, because you have to take a look. Take a look at yourself. Is it yourself? If it's them, what can you do to help them fix it? If there's constant patterns of them always being jealous of you or belittling you, then that might be a cause to say, okay, you know what, no more. But again, like I said, it comes down to you determining the relationship, what is good for you, and is this relationship that you believe that in time can be better. You believe that it needs to end because it's doing nothing but draining you, and they're always taking but never giving. Peter, who denied Jesus, was forgiven. And even Judas would have been forgiven had he not been rash in his decision making. But Judas ran off, thinking he was beyond the point of forgiveness, and killed himself. And it's such a tragedy, because we don't know, we'll never know what could have become of Judas. he was willing to forgive Peter, he definitely would have forgave Judas. And sometimes we got to forgive that Judas in our lives. The beauty of Judas is that Judas will drive us to our cross, our destiny. If it wasn't because of Judas, Jesus wouldn't have been sold out to the Roman guards and taken to crucifixion. While our Judases hurt us and betray us, we need to forgive them and then go about our way and be thankful for what they did show us. Because even unhealthy relationships can teach us some things. Teach us things about ourselves, help us to see things that we would normally miss because we're so blindsided. We can be overly compassionate. I'm not saying that we can give people too many times the benefit of the doubt and let them walk all over us, become doormats. Like I said, we have to be careful in our relationships and know when enough is enough. Be compassionate, be kind, but at the same time, understand that you may have to cut ties sometimes. We turn now to history. We take a look at the Wright brothers, Orville Wilbur Wright, who in December 17th, 1903, had the first controlled, sustained flight of an engine-powered aircraft. They gained these mechanical skills by working together for years in their Dayton, Ohio-based shop. They were brothers. They had a close relationship with each other and with their sister Catherine. There was other children, but these three seemed to really have a deep connection with each other. What you ought to find with relationships is there's a deep connection between you and the other person. It just makes it work. There's something there that you have, that mutual connection. And that connection is the springboard for you, or the foundation for you to build upon. The Wright brothers were pretty much inseparable. They enjoyed each other's company. Sometimes our siblings, we have if you have a brother or sister or multiple, there might be some that you enjoy their company more than others, and you forge a closer relationship. Such is the case with Orville and Wilbur Wright. Together, through their relationship, they were able to have great success and to create the first sustained flight of an aircraft. Through our relationships, great success can come. Through the right relationships, we can achieve great things. This doesn't mean that we can't do it of our own accord, but sometimes we need someone else in our life who's the other half of the puzzle that pushes us or works with us to achieve greatness. Another case, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs founded Apple in 1976. They were friends since high school, and they both had the common point of a desire to create personal computers. So they developed a partnership that lasted only a few years, and then they parted ways. The point is that together they were able to develop Apple, founded it, which we know is huge, especially in the cell phone, tablet, computer industry. A lot of people love Apple products. And this all came about through a relationship. Two people working together with the same goal in mind, and they developed this Apple products. And what we learn from this is, again, success comes sometimes through the right relationships. We also learn that some relationships are only for a season. You might have someone that, for a few years, you know, you hang out, you're good friends, and maybe someone gets a job, moves away, and you still stay in touch, but you don't have nearly the connection or the hangouts that you did because of distance. And sometimes people just go their ways for whatever reason. But again, relationships are sometimes seasonal and sometimes they're for a lifetime. And if you needed them to get to where you were going, God would lead them in your lives. But if you don't need them, or they're going to hinder you from where you're going, you have to trust God sometimes to say, okay, look, I relinquish control of my relationships and give them to you. That's part of the, looking into yourself and saying, okay, do I need this relationship, or is it time for me to move on with my life? It all comes through intentional introspection and self-reflection. While we can't always necessarily determine, it's where we involve God in our lives. Because God sometimes will direct us or let us know who belongs and who doesn't. Sometimes we may be hindering ourselves, and sometimes we wonder why we can't do this or why things aren't. It might be we're connected to someone we shouldn't be. I've had to take a look at some of the people in my life and make the hard determination just to say, you know what, this isn't working. Even in the social media world, you don't need to be friends with everyone. Not that you're really friends, you're more connections or acquaintances. I pride myself in my loyalty to people, being faithful and sticking by people's side. And you give people the benefit of the doubt too many times, sometimes. And there have been people that I've friends with and stuff that it's not they're bad people, but it's just that they're more of a weight or a hindrance. Bad company corrupts good character. You can get around the wrong people who are content, complacent where they're at, don't want to go any further, and they'll almost in a way convince you to stay where you're at, stay with them, and then instead of scaling that mountain to greater heights, you're stuck at the base around a campfire for the rest of your life because you're too afraid to let go of certain people. You need to know which ones are for a season, which ones are for a lifetime. You need to know when to let go and when to persist and to continue to cultivate that relationship so that both of both you and whoever can mutually benefit. There's a lot of verses in the Bible on relationships. Picked out a few. So I'm going to read these real quick. This is probably one of the better ones, Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. It really just conveys and drives home the point. Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. Woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if two lie together, then they have heat. How can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him. The threefold cord is not quickly broken. If you're all alone, isolated, who's going to help? Looking at yourself, you're self-reflecting, realize that you don't really have any relationships. Figure out what's wrong, fix it, get some people that you can trust. You're not meant to be alone. You can find yourself in situations and no one to help you, and then you're going to wonder how to get out of it. And God might be gracious to help you, but sometimes He'll leave you to learn, hey, you're kind of doing this to yourself because you are isolated, you're all alone. You won't trust anyone. And trust is another subject in and of itself. It can be difficult sometimes to cultivate and have relationships because people have betrayed your trust so many times. That's why you have to move slow and observe and know who's right and who's not. Leviticus 26:8. So this chapter is the promises of obedience, but then after the promises of obedience, I think it's around verse 14, it switches to the promises of disobedience. So for obedience, we'll be given these things, but if we're not, then we'll be punished. The promise of obedience in Leviticus 26:8, 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and the enemy shall fall before you by the sword. 5 of you, 100, 10, and 100 of you, 10,000. Strength in numbers, strength in relationships. It's important to surround ourselves with those who are going to help us, and that it's important to see that God has designed us to be in community and to work together for greater things. We'll get to Mark in just a minute. I'm going to go to Deuteronomy 32:30. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except the rock had sold them and the Lord had shut them up? Notice one chases 1,000, two 10,000. It's kind of similar to Leviticus here. But this is possible because the Lord is a rock. So you see almost a threefold cord. One, in relationship to another person, and you have the Lord as their rock, as their foundation. Good friendships, good relationships are built upon the Lord. When the Lord is the center of our lives, and we find people who have the Lord as the center of their lives, it makes for a good relationship. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't have a relationship if God's not the center. I have friendships and relationships with people who don't go to church, and that's okay, because they need to know that they're loved. They need to know that they're cared. People that care. We can't isolate ourselves to only having relationships in the church. That's also unhealthy. The only thing that we need to do is just be careful that those people outside of the church that are our friends aren't influencing us to leave or to do things that are contrary to the Word of God. Finally, Mark chapter 6, verses 7 to 13. And he called on him the 12, the 12 disciples, and began to send them forth by 2 and 2. He gave them power over unclean spirits. He commanded them they should take nothing for the journey, save a staff only, no scrip, no bread, no money in their purse. Be shod with sandals, and not put on 2 coats. He said unto them, In what place soever ye enter into an house, there abide till ye depart from that place. Whosoever shall not receive you nor hear you when ye depart thence, shake off the dust on your feet for testimony against them. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. And they went out and preached that men should repent. And they cast out many devils and anointed with oil many that were sick and healed them. Jesus sent them out 2 by 2. Partnerships, relationship. It was better that they went with another person. 12 disciples, 6 groups of 2. So we see again the importance of relationships. Some final thoughts. We look at my relationships and what I've learned. I've shared with you some stuff already. Look at briefly narcissistic relationships, emotional intelligence, and we're going to talk about accountability in these final thoughts. What I've learned. As I said, I've learned that some people in your life are for a season, and others for a lifetime. I've been what I believe to be a loyal person. Been burnt many times because of this. But at the end of the day, despite all the pain, my conscience is clear, knowing that I did my best to help out in the relationship. Sometimes it was me that was the problem. Sometimes it was him, sometimes it was both of us. I've learned that some people just don't want help. No matter what you do, they don't want help. When they want help, they don't want it from you. For whatever reason. They don't like you, they don't like your appearance, whatever. Relationships are tricky. They're tough to navigate. Some people are willing to work through conflict to do the hard work to better the relationship. And others just emotionally, and this relates to emotional intelligence, they don't want to do it. Leave things where they are, never to change. That's not good. Conflict is not fun. Working through difficulties is not fun. If we don't do it, if we don't self-reflect on ourselves, if we don't self-reflect on relationships, then we're going to have unhealthy relationships. We're going to drain each other. We're going to be toxic and poison to one another. And we're just ultimately defeating ourselves. That's not what it's meant to be. It's not easy to do the hard work of looking at yourself, looking at your relationships, and making the hard decisions. And again, it's something we have to do. That's the point of these self-reflection series, is doing hard work. Because we just want an easy life and just kind of want to flow through and want nothing to disrupt us or hurt us. I have a friendship with an individual who many people gave up on. Many to this day said that it just never changed. I've said this in the past, and some still say it now. And yet I remained his friend. Checked in on him every now and then. Just a few texts here and there, and sometimes that's all it takes. Just letting someone know that you care. If someone isn't worth 5 minutes of your time, well, that's already a problem in itself. What the good news is he's back in church. And he's doing the work of fixing himself and getting himself right. And it's all because someone dared to believe in him and continued to have a relationship, a friendship with him. Some people just need someone who's willing to stick it out and endure the rough roads and helps them to get back to where they need to be. I have another friend who's an Ohio State fan. I'm a Michigan fan, and couldn't be more opposite on that front if we tried. We mess around with each other, pick on each other about who's the better team. There's just one difference. Sometimes we might butt heads on other things. I'd say we have a pretty good friendship. Differences don't always dictate relationships. It's okay to have differences. You don't have to see eye to eye on everything. A healthy relationship is working through the differences, bringing your own uniqueness to the table, working through those, agreeing to disagree, and not letting it affect you, and remaining friends and true to each other despite this. Narcissism or narcissistic relationships really come to light as of late in the last few years. There's a lot of books on this, and I encourage you, if you have the time, to study this topic. I know it could be a buzzword and gets used a lot lately. It gets a lot of attention. But it is a real thing. Not everyone is. Not every hurt and relationship deals with a narcissistic person. People can misuse it to excuse themselves for their own bad behavior. We all have some narcissistic traits. However, those that are heavily narcissistic, that's their personality. They're not going to change. Personality is usually static. You might be able to make adjustments to yourself. You might be able to do the hard work. At the core, your personality is who you are. That's who you're going to be. The problem with narcissistic people is they're dangerous. I've been the victim with them. They damage you emotionally and mentally. If you don't learn to recognize them, they can do the same to you. Your interaction with them should be short, simple, and to the point. Be careful giving them too much information. They'll use it against you. They'll weaponize your past against you. They'll weaponize your mistakes. They have an inner circle that they employ. They like to use these people. They're called flying monkeys. They spy on you and then report back to them. And there's many types of narcissistic people. Again, like I said, it's a broad subject. My point is that these relationships exist. So when self-reflecting, you look at yourself and then look at them and realize sometimes it's not your fault, at least entirely or maybe at all. Don't be too hard on yourself. Be kind, be loving, grow, mature, and try to cultivate meaningful relationships. Know that not everyone's going to see you for the value that you are, and not everyone's going to appreciate you and believe in your dreams. Some people, like narcissistic people, will appear to, but they only will take you for a ride. It's important that these kinds of relationships are strictly business. You don't share too much. Oversharing is a huge problem. While we need to be trusting and transparent, we also need to be careful with who we share information with. Emotional intelligence is arguably more important than IQ. what experts say. You can be educated, horrible at managing relationships. But even if you're not the brightest person, someone who has high emotional intelligence, kind, loving, understands your plight, empathetic and compassionate, they might be better than someone just citing a load of book knowledge. Emotional intelligence helps you to regulate yourself, your emotions, and helps you deal with the emotions of others. Self-reflecting in relationships, emotional intelligence is a key component in growth. There's a book by Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence. The reason I bring this up is because sometimes relationships fall apart because we're not healthy emotionally. We can't work through conflict. We can't process things. We get heated and upset and angry, and our feelings and emotions get in the way. Emotional intelligence involves effective communication. It involves empathy, conflict resolution, and coming to a mutual understanding. Too many people strive for a hassle-free relationship instead of doing the hard work. Relationships take time, and they take work if they're going to be great. We have to develop the emotional intelligence to do this. Take a little time and study this area. It will help you in your self-reflection as you cultivate healthy relationships, as you work on yourself, and as you work on becoming better in relationships with others. Lastly, be accountable to yourself and to others. Be open to do the hard work of change. If someone points something out, don't dismiss it. Examine yourself, see there's accuracy to it. There's a time I was told I was extremely defensive and I couldn't see it. But when I did the hard work of self-reflection, I realized that person was right. It was something from my past. I learned to protect myself by being defensive. And I've worked on it, and sometimes I still can be. But I always dismissed it until I did the hard work of self-reflection. And I corrected it. And then I moved forward. We need to cultivate the traits and develop the traits that are good for relationships, like trust, honesty, compassion, empathy, understanding. We need to seek to truly listen. Not listen to respond, but listen to understand. There's a difference. Oftentimes people get halfway through what they're saying and then we're already formulating a response and we're missing out on things. Seek to understand, seek to hear people, build those relationships that are healthy. Because relationships are important. A single one of us is an island. In a book called Healing What's Within, the author cites this staggering fact. Chronic disconnection will magnify the risk of illness and death, mimicking the impact of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Disconnected, isolated, alone, without relationships. We need each other. We need community. We need to start with ourselves, self-reflect and fix ourselves. And we need to work on our relationships. We need to work on our attitudes. We need to work on areas of our lives so that we can have healthy relationships. Relationships are important for our health. You need others. Others need you. We were designed for community. So do your best to work on these things. And hopefully that this episode has helped you. And I pray it's been a blessing. Next week, we're going to address Thanksgiving or thankfulness. Take a look at ourselves. How thankful are we? Do we thank God for just the little things or the big things? Or do you complain about everything all the time? A lot of us will find that we thank God for the big things, we forget about all the little things that He does. Waking us up, an A on a paper, maybe that $5 that came out of nowhere that we needed. It's the little and the big things. You should be thankful in all things. God is good to us. We need to examine ourselves and our lives to see all the things that we have to be thankful for. It's important. An attitude of gratitude. So we're going to address this and some more next week. Till that time, thank you for tuning in. God bless.